If you take a selfie in front of the massive ancient walls of Osaka Castle today, you are actually taking a photo of a 400-year-old crime scene cover-up.
You really are, yeah.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we are exploring this really fascinating historical research report titled The Reconstruction of Toyotomi Hideyoshi's Osaka. And honestly, it just fundamentally shatters the way we think about historical cities.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, usually we treat these places like museums.
Right, exactly. We look at the castle, read the little bronze plaque, and just assume the city sort of, I don't know, grew there organically, just a messy accumulation of people over centuries.
We assume it's just a byproduct of time. But when you look at Osaka through the lens of 16th century Japan, that organic city looks more like a massive, highly engineered circuit board.
Yeah.
Hideyoshi chose the ruins of the Ishiyama Honganji Temple to build Osaka Castle. But he wasn't just constructing a military fort, he was deliberately shifting the entire center of power in Japan.
Get away from the old guard.
Exactly. Pulling it away from the ancient aristocratic capital of Kyoto and away from the fiercely autonomous merchant hub of Sakai.
Okay, let's unpack this, because we aren't just looking at a standard tourist guide here. We're looking at how a peasant-turned-warlord didn't just build a city, he weaponized urban planning to mind control a nation.
That's a great way to frame it.
Yeah, Osaka wasn't a natural settlement. It was a piece of ruling technology. And over our time together today, we're going to uncover 5 hidden historical narratives deeply embedded in Osaka's DNA.
And we're going to reveal the secret physical remnants of this absolute mastermind that you, the listener, can actually go out and visit today.
Which is the best part.
It really is. It is a journey from the sewers below the streets all the way to the temples reaching into the sky. And, to understand how Hideyoshi projected his power upward, we really first have to look at how he controlled the ground beneath everyone's feet.
Right, because you can't build a massive empire if your city's a mess.
Exactly. You have to manage a massive population boom. You've got samurai, artisans, and merchants all suddenly cramming into a brand new city. And with that kind of density comes the immediate deadly threat of disease.
It's like playing SimCity. But instead of just drawing residential zones, you force everyone to share a backyard drain so you can, regulate their private lives.
That is exactly what he did. Hideyoshi implemented what the locals called the Taiko Gazui Taiko, being his retired regent title.
Right.
He mandated this incredibly rigid grid for the city, dividing it into blocks of about 40 ken.
Which is roughly 72 meters square, right?
Yep, 72 meters. And he took that grid and applied it directly to the sanitation system. Instead of putting sewers out in the street, he built these back-to-back stone drainage ditches right down the property lines behind the houses.
Okay.
So every house had to drain its wastewater backward into this shared stone-lined trench.
Wait. If the state forces your plumbing to be carved in stone exactly 72 meters apart, they've permanently locked in your property lines.
Yes.
You've just used sanitation to secretly rewrite the tax code.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that is exactly the genius of it. You've hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
Because in the medieval period before this, land rights were incredibly chaotic.
Just overlapping and constantly disputed, I imagine.
Total nightmare for a ruler. So this was spatial standardization. Hideyoshi physically broke those old, chaotic land rights. He forced the citizens into a measurable, taxable, surveyable system. You cannot hide your property size from the tax collector when your boundaries are literally carved in stone by the state.
That is so brilliantly evil.
And the engineering behind it was brilliant, too. He used a technique called nozorazumi, which involves stacking unhewn, natural stones without any mortar.
Wait, that sounds incredibly unstable for a sewer system. Why wouldn't you want, perfectly fitted sealed stones?
Because of hydrostatic pressure. If you seal a wall completely, the water building up in the soil behind it during a massive typhoon will eventually just push the wall over.
Oh, sure. The pressure has nowhere to go.
Right. So by using uncut stones, the tiny natural gaps act as a built-in drainage system. The water seeps through without blowing out the trench. That is why these structures survive for centuries. I mean, Osaka had these highly functional, physics-defying stone sewers, while cities like London and Paris were still
emptying chamber pods out of second-story windows into the open street.
Exactly.
And for anyone listening who wants to see this engineering marvel, you actually can if you go to the Nanenbashi area. This is right next to Minamio Elementary School in Osaka. There is a special glass viewing window set right into the street.
It's really
Yeah,
cool.
you can literally look down and see the 400-year-old uncut stone sewers. And the best part is, they're still actively draining Osaka's water today. It's not some dead ruin in a museum. It's a living piece of Hideyoshi's machine.
It truly is. But once Hideyoshi had the physical health and the geographical layout of the city under his thumb, he faced the next hurdle of state building.
Nice.
He needed capital. You cannot run a unified national empire without a thriving economy, which brings us to the ruthless absorption of Sakai.
Yeah, I read this part of the research, and I have to say, the historical narrative feels a bit sanitized to me.
Oh, how so?
Well, Hideyoshi fills in the defensive moats of Sakai, which, by the way, was known as the Venice of the East because of its immense wealth and independence.
Right.
He strips them of their physical defenses and then just forces all these wealthy merchants to move to his new city in Osaka. And the way it's often framed is like they just agreed to pack up and leave.
It sounds a bit too polite.
Yeah. It sounds less like a migration and more like a mafia protection racket disguised as a corporate buyout.
Well, consider the alternative from the merchants' perspective. They had watched other autonomous cities try to resist warlords and literally get burned to ash.
Oh, true. Nobunaga did a lot of that.
Exactly. So for the merchants of Sakai, trading a physical moat for a guaranteed monopoly in a unified national market wasn't just yielding to a mob boss. It was a highly rational, bloodless business merger. Hideyoshi offered them a compromise they couldn't refuse.
By creating the Semba district.
Right, he gave them the Semba district in Osaka and granted them Rakuchi Rakuza status.
Meaning tax-free, deregulated trade zones, right? Along with massive land grants.
Exactly.
So they lost the political independence of their city, but they got the keys to the entire national economy in return.
That forced migration is what birthed what we now call Osaka's merchant soul. It cultivated this pragmatic, business-first attitude that honestly still defines the city today. But Hideyoshi didn't just want their money, though. He wanted their cultural capital, too.
Right.
He relocated major cultural figures, most notably the legendary tea master, Sen no Rikyu.
Because the tea ceremony wasn't just like a nice cultural hobby for a warlord to unwind with, it was deeply political.
Extremely political. Think about the mechanics of the traditional tea room. Hideyoshi and Rikyu popularized the use of the Nujiriguchi, which is this tiny crawling-in entrance.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So you take a powerful, heavily armed samurai warlord, force him to leave his swords outside, and make him crawl on his hands and knees through a tiny door into a silent, austere room.
That is the ultimate psychological power play. You strip them of their defenses and force them into absolute vulnerability.
And in that state of vulnerability, in a highly exclusive, intimate setting, national policy was dictated. The tea ceremony was completely transformed from a spiritual merchant class practice into a highly effective tool of statecraft.
That's wild. You know, if you were visiting Osaka today, you really have to walk through the Semba district. The grid of the north-south streets, which are called Tsuji, and the east-west streets called Dori, is the exact layout Hideyoshi forced upon those merchants.
It's unchanged.
And a real hidden gem there is Doshomachi, the historical medicine street. You can visit the Konishi family residence there, which perfectly preserves that wealthy merchant legacy.
And I highly recommend taking a short trip south to the Sakai Plaza of Rikyu and Akiko in modern Sakai as well.
Oh, why is that?
It offers a profound, almost melancholic contrast. You can explore the ghost of the magnificent independent city that Hideyoshi methodically dismantled to feed Osaka's rise.
Wow, that's a great tip. But you know, wealth buys you monopolies and merchants, but it doesn't buy you divine right.
No, it doesn't.
In a 16th century society obsessed with aristocratic bloodlines, a peasant-born warlord with a fat wallet is still, at the end of the day, just a peasant. Hideyoshi had a glaring hole in his resume.
He really did.
To be the undisputed ruler, he needed a spiritual rebrand. Here's where it gets really interesting. It's like a modern tech billionaire buying a legacy newspaper to look dignified.
That's a perfect analogy.
Hideyoshi had to hack Japan's religious history.
And he did exactly that with Osaka's sacred geography. He poured unprecedented funds into rebuilding Shitanoji, which is a temple originally founded way back in 593 by the legendary Prince Shotoku.
Okay, so a very ancient, very respected site.
Yes. But he didn't just fund a standard renovation. He mandated restoring the exact ancient Asuka-style layout.
Which means the gate, the pagoda, the main hall, and the lecture hall all had to be perfectly aligned in a single straight line, completely surrounded by a corridor.
Right.
Sourcing the massive timbers And engineering an exact 6th century replica in the 1500s must have been a logistical nightmare.
Oh, it required an astronomical amount of labor and wealth. But the aesthetic choice was totally deliberate. This was pure cultural hegemony.
Right. He's making a statement.
By painstakingly resurrecting the architecture of Japan's most revered ancient figure, Hideyoshi was positioning the upstart Toyotomi family as the ultimate protectors and inheritors of ancient tradition. And doing this in Osaka was a calculated insult to the emperor sitting over in Kyoto.
Oh, I see. He's effectively building a second capital. He has the raw, secular military power projecting from Osaka Castle, and he's manufacturing this sacred historical power radiating from the temples he controls.
Exactly. He completely undercut Kyoto's monopoly on ceremonial authority.
And tourists walk through Shitenoji or Sumiyoshi Taisha today, look at these beautiful structures, and just assume they are standard ancient relics.
They completely miss the propaganda hiding in plain sight.
Well, if you want to see this propaganda for yourself, look for specific pieces. At Shitenoji, seek out the Ishibutai, the stone stage.
Yes, definitely.
And at Sumiyoshi Taisha, look closely at the base of the Soribashi, the famous arched bridge. Both of those were donated directly by Hideyoshi's son, Hideyori, and his mother.
And they miraculously survived the World War II firebombing that destroyed all the wooden buildings around them.
And they survived modern concrete renovations, too.
Yeah.
Touching those stones means touching a political narrative that has endured for 4 centuries.
It's incredible, but, Hideyoshi's ambition inevitably spilled outward beyond the city streets and temples into the natural world itself.
He had to control everything.
Everything. Osaka is famously a city of water. But in the 16th century, the Yodogawa River Delta wasn't this neat, navigable harbor. It was a chaotic, flooding, extremely dangerous wetland.
Which is a problem, because if you want ships to sail smoothly from the inland capital regions right to your new economic hub, you can't rely on a swamp.
No, you cannot.
So the report notes, he launched the Taikotsumi mega project. He decides to just manually reroute 3 major rivers, the Ujigawa, the Kizugawa, and the Katsuagawa.
Yep.
How do you even accomplish river engineering on that scale in the 1500s without heavy machinery? And how do you enforce a toll booth on a raging river?
You do it with sheer, staggering human labor. Hideyoshi mobilized his subject warlords, forcing them to foot the bill naturally.
Classic move.
Imagine thousands of laborers standing waist-deep in freezing mud. They constructed massive stone dams called ishidashi to tame the rapids.
Wow.
And they did this by weaving giant bamboo baskets, filling them with massive boulders, and dropping them from boats into the raging currents just to break the water's force.
That sounds incredibly dangerous.
Yeah.
And then they drove thousands of wooden piles of kyuchi into the soft mud to build up the artificial banks. Picture teams of men lifting massive wooden mallets on rope pulleys, dropping them repeatedly in the mud, all by hand.
Just back-breaking work.
They physically walled off the rivers from the massive Ogura Pond, funneling them into artificial, strictly controlled channels.
And by doing so, he turned a natural disaster zone into a golden waterway. Because once the river is in an artificial channel, you control the ports.
Right.
Suddenly, every single boat carrying tax rice, timber, or trade goods from the interior of Japan had no choice but to sail down his monitored canal right past his tax collectors to reach the sea.
He transformed a chaotic swamp into a forced toll road. If the river only flows where he wants it to, he effectively controls the entire logistics network of Western Japan.
Precisely. And that massive infrastructure project allowed Osaka to become the booming economic center known as the nation's kitchen.
To see the sheer scale of this human labor, you should actually leave central Osaka and head to Uji City. Go to the Chizuna Museum, where they actually excavated the ruins of this 400-year-old embankment.
It's a great exhibit.
You can see the stones and the wooden stakes. But there is an even cooler secret for when you were walking around Osaka itself. If you stroll along the modern Yodogawa River, you'll notice some of the old traditional streets are elevated higher than the surrounding areas.
Yes.
You aren't just walking up a hill, you are walking directly on top of Hideyoshi's buried levees.
His infrastructure literally still dictates the topography of the modern city. And this actually brings us to the climax of our historical dive.
Fall?
Hideyoshi built a perfect machine of a city. He controlled the earth, the economy, the gods, and the rivers. But then he died, and things went downhill very fast for his family.
Yeah, in 1615, the Tokugawa shogunate besieged Osaka Castle. Hideyoshi's heir committed suicide as the castle burned, and the Toyotomi clan was completely wiped out. The Tokugawa take over Japan, but they are left with a glaring problem.
what do you do with the ultimate monument of your vanquished enemy? I mean, the entire city was built in his image.
Right. What's fascinating here is they utilized a concept the ancient Romans called damnatio memoria, the condemnation of memory.
They didn't just erase Hideyoshi from the history books, they applied that erasure physically to the landscape itself. They buried his legacy alive.
Wait. I've seen photos of Osaka Castle. It's massive. You're telling me the castle tourists flock to is a giant fake-out?
It is entirely a Tokugawa creation. And we are not talking about sprinkling a thin layer of topsoil over the ruins either. They brought in tens of meters of earth.
The logistics of that must have been insane.
Almost incomprehensible. The Tokugawa mobilized fleets of ships and thousands of hand-drawn carts, hauling millions of tons of soil just to entomb this structure. They dumped meters of dirt directly over the scorched ruins of Toyotomi's castle, and then, right on top of that artificial mountain of dirt, they built a new, perfectly symmetrical, aggressively larger castle.
So when millions of tourists go to Osaka Castle today and take a selfie in front of those massive, perfect, sheer stone walls, they were looking at a 100% Tokugawa construction.
I think exactly right.
The Tokugawa built those walls specifically to physically suppress the memory of Hideyoshi. They wanted people to look up and only see Tokugawa power.
And it was an incredibly successful campaign. I mean, for centuries, everyone assumed the original castle was completely gone, pulverized into dust. That changed in 1984.
Oh, wow. What happened then?
During an archaeological dig near the main keep, researchers dug down through meters of dirt and suddenly hit something incredible.
The wild, uncut stones, the original Nozurazumi walls of Hideyoshi's castle.
Yes, still standing, hidden in the dark, and still bearing the black scorch marks from the fires of 1615.
That gives me chills.
It is a profound physical manifestation of history. And by the way, there's a new Toyotomi Yoshigaki exhibition facility opening in 2025, where you'll be able to go underground beneath the current castle and actually stand in the dirt and look at those original scorched stones.
Oh, that is an absolute must visit.
Definitely. We can look back at everything we've discussed today. The stone sewers locking in the tax grids, the displaced merchants building a national economy, the replicated ancient temples stealing divine authority, the hand-driven wooden piles rerouting rivers, and finally, the buried castle. Osaka is a physical record of Japan's transition from the chaotic, warring medieval period to a highly controlled, engineered, modern state. It is a theater of power where every single street corner and stone wall was a calculated political move.
So what does this all mean for you? We've spent this deep dive talking about the rulers. We explored Hideyoshi building the machine and the Tokugawa burying it. But cities aren't just made of stone, dirt, and warlords. They are made of people.
Absolutely.
So here's my challenge to you. Do some sleuthing on your own. Go down the historical rabbit hole and look into how the ordinary citizens of Osaka reacted to living on top of their beloved founder's buried city during the Edo period.
That's a great question.
Did they just accept the Tokugawa's memory erasure? Did they leave secret codes in their woodblock prints? Did they pass down subversive folklore whispered in those tiny merchant tea rooms? How does a population resist when their history is literally buried under their feet? Find out for yourself.
It is a deeply compelling question, and, the answers are out there for those willing to dig into the local archives and folk histories.
Remember how we started today? Looking at a city like a museum, assuming it just grew organically? I don't think you will ever look at a street grid, a sewer drain, or a castle wall the same way again.
I know I don't.
That organic landscape is a highly engineered circuit board, and now you know how to read the wiring. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. Keep diving deep.